I am Lauren Stein. I'm the manager of implementation here at Alterity, and today we're going to be working on importing data. So when using the Acctivate import data utility, you have a couple of options on what kind of file you can use. Supported file types are Excel, comma separated, or tab delimited text files. The most commonly used file type is Excel, since the user has the full functionality offered, like formulas and filtering and sorting and all that good stuff. Excel is also something easily updated. Typically, customers using comma separated or tab delimited files are exporting this information from either their web store or another program that doesn't offer Excel as an option. The imports can be used to add new or modify existing records, as well as create inventory transactions to either post directly into stock or create the session for review. You'll hear this term a lot, mapping. Mapping refers to linking the columns to specific fields in Acctivate. This is set up in each template based on your needs. Even when the mappings don't match up, the user has the ability to set up what we call conversions to change things like each as EACH to EA in order to match the setup that's in Acctivate. One of the most important things to do before running an import is to run a backup. I can't tell you how important this is no matter what you're doing if you're going to be changing information in Acctivate. This will give you the ability to roll back the changes after importing. If you're running the import for the first time, it's definitely recommended to import while maybe it's a part of your downtime during the day, just in case you've mapped something incorrectly and for some reason you would need to restore the backup so users don't lose any information that they're currently working on. As I said previously, the most commonly used program for imports is Excel. One way to get data out of Acctivate for updating records or even creating new ones would be by way of Excel queries on the database. This gives you the ability to connect directly into a specific Acctivate table or view in order to grab information. Doing this, you'll have the full functionality of Excel at your fingertips in order to use formulas to adjust data, filter, copy, paste, and also be able to immediately import back into Acctivate without having to really modify the format of the Excel spreadsheet. And these are mainly designed for imports versus printing information. We do have some customers that use Excel queries to print or report on information, but most of the time people are using Excel queries in order to import information. Our customers also have the ability to export crystal reports into spreadsheets in order to modify data and import information back into the program. Some standard reports that we have may need slight customization to export in a format useful for imports. If you need this modification, we can either point you in the right direction if you're familiar with crystal reports, or possibly assist with slight modifications. If you need a completely new or custom crystal report for specifically exporting information to Excel, and it's not something that we can do, then we can definitely, again, point you in the right direction on how to get that done. Other customers of ours use exports from their web store to update products and Acctivate, since the web store integration that we currently have only sends item availability back to the store, so adding or modifying your product database in Acctivate is not going to update your web store. So if you happen to be maintaining your products on your web store, you can use this to update or create Acctivate products by exporting data from the web store in any of the supported file formats. There are alternate programs which export as CSV or tab delimited as well, but again, most imports are going to be done through Excel. In the latest version of Acctivate, our customers have a longer list of options for creating or updating records. We have customer, inventory, and shipping imports available. The customer import gives you the ability to create or modify existing customers, including but not limited to customer contacts and ship-to locations. We also have the customer product ID import to quickly add a list of customer-specific product IDs to each customer record. This would be utilized when you have a number of products in Acctivate that you wish to have a different product ID or description shown to the customer when forms are printed. So that way you don't have to have multiple products set up that are technically the same product ID or the same product whenever you have your customers that need to use their own product IDs, or even goes back to vendor product IDs. So you can keep the history and transactions all on the Acctivate product, but then you can assign these customer product IDs to each of your customers if that need exists. For inventory imports, you have the option to add or modify products, product component lists for assemblies, kits, or assortments, product prices, and we also have new imports for product class and product type. If your vendors send you spreadsheets related to the purchase orders that you're sending them, including what's been shipped to your warehouse, you can use those spreadsheets to create a receipt import to either create an inventory receipt session for your review, or to go ahead and post the receipt directly from the import into your warehouse. Some of our customers need to also import what we call balance adjustments on a regular basis. This need exists when you have either a mass quantity of product valuations that need to be updated for some reason or another, or the need to set the quantity on hand as of the end of the day. Because again, balance adjustments set the quantity and value as of the end of the day and would possibly fluctuate if you post transactions on the same day. That topic is for a different webinar, though. We won't go into too much detail here today. If you have lot or serial control, you also have the ability to import the lot or serial numbers directly into inventory. This import isn't related to inventory transactions, as it immediately posts the import into inventory rather than giving the user the option of posting or not. So it's not going to be importing in like a receipt or a balance adjustment. It just puts those lots or serial numbers into inventory. Typically, this is done only when starting a new Acctivate company. The inventory receipt import does allow users to relate the transactions to a purchase order, as well as create lot numbers, which again isn't a function of this import type. This import is solely to create lot serial numbers and put them in your warehouse. When utilizing the bin locations module, you can import the list of locations to either create or update existing locations. If you're creating locations from scratch, you'll need to make sure that the bin locations are enabled in configuration management. Because once you purchase bin locations, you'll still have to go into Configuration Manager, enable them in case you were using our generic location field on your products. You'll be able to convert those into bin locations. The shipping import is used to create package records for shipment. That's going to be used for the Packages tab on the Sales Order or Packaging Manager if you're going to be utilizing that module. Also, for each template, users have the option to create new mappings, edit existing, or delete outdated mappings. And then we also have a checkbox to include inactive if for some reason you have inactive imports. Okay, in the mapping editor summary, there you'll see a summary section. You'll see a source spreadsheet. This is where you select the spreadsheet that you're actually going to use for the import. Or again, if it's a text file. I'm going to continue to say spreadsheet throughout the webinar because that, again, is the most commonly used way to import data, but we do allow the flat file, CSV, and text imports as well. The source spreadsheet is the spreadsheet you actually use for the import. Below that section, you'll see where you can select the specific worksheet for importing. This is only going to be available for the Excel imports with multiple tabs because flat files don't allow multiple tabs. Also, there is a checkbox to tell Acctivate whether or not the first row of the file contains field names. With this checked, when you have column headers, you'll not only see the column letter or number across the top, but you'll also see the column header title in the preview section. In the mapping details, you'll assign the mapping ID, name, description, and mapping status. You'll see the name in the selecting template section of the import utility and a blurb for the description at the bottom of the window. So you can, if you have a ton of different templates set up, you'll be able to easily discern between each one. Once you specify this information, make sure to save the mapping so you can go back and use it in the future. To start mapping the columns of your file to the import, you'll select the Columns tab. This gives you a list of Acctivate fields to map each column to. The Acctivate field is the actual field that you are going to be updating in Acctivate. The mapped field is the column of the file that you're importing. Let's say column B is product ID, so you'll click on the product ID Acctivate field to select it and map column B to this field in the mapped field section. When creating new records, we also allow users to assign a default value. This value will be used when the field in the file is either blank or doesn't exist. A lot of times we'll use this in implementation when creating a large list of products. If all the items are inventoried, there isn't a need to add a column for item type and have that value repeat down for each row. Instead, you can map a default value of inventoried and move on to the next field. This also comes in handy when you have missing data in the import file. You can map the default value for something like unit of measure or product type for when you hit a row that doesn't list one of those values for the new items. Let's say you get an import spreadsheet from your vendor and they have a unit of measure listed as each, as an EACH, rather than what you have configured in Acctivate as EA. You can use the conversion section to convert each to EA upon import. Now this is only used for text conversions rather than formulas, so you're not going to be able to set like a wildcard or say like an if-then statement or something like that for the conversion. It's going to be this value needs to be converted from, like I said, each, or let's say tax category ID from Fort Worth to FW. So you have to set that specific value in the conversions. The mapping editor also shows you what you have done so far in the preview window. You'll see your column headers as the first row and the mapped Acctivate field names in the second row, which allows you to verify what's been mapped before clicking Begin Import. So you can just quickly go through and make sure that everything's mapped properly. We have what we call key fields. When creating the mapping, you'll notice some fields marked with a key symbol and others marked with an R. You can see that on the screenshot up on the screen. The key symbols are the primary fields you need to map in order to create or update records, and the R fields are to tell you other fields required for certain imports. For instance, the customer import all require a customer ID, but you will also need the contact ID or location ID when adding or modifying customer contacts and or shipping locations. But that customer ID is going to be the primary key because that's how Acctivate knows which record to add that new contact or location to. The product imports vary depending on which import you're processing. The product component, product price, receipt, balance adjustment, and lot serial imports all require product ID to be mapped. You can see that little key symbol there on screen. If you're creating new products, you'll also need a number of other fields mapped, such as description, class, type, etc. And those are the ones marked with an R in the screenshot. When simply updating items, you're only required to map the ID plus whatever other fields you're importing. The product component import also requires component product ID and quantity to be mapped. The product class and type import require the class ID and type to be mapped. Those don't require product because that's importing in configuration. The warehouse import requires the warehouse ID and bin location in order to update or add to the location list. For shipments, you're only required to map the package ID. There are some advanced options for users to utilize depending on what you're trying to accomplish. One of these is duplicate handling. The default for duplicate handling is to replace existing data with import data, ignoring blank fields. This means a blank field will be skipped on the import rather than overriding the Acctivate field it's mapped to as blank data. So let's say you mapped alternate product ID in the product import with this option selected, and one of the products listed in the spreadsheet doesn't have a value in the alternate product ID field. Let's say that product has an existing alternate product ID in Acctivate for that product. So if you run that import, it's not going to override the existing alternate product ID for the products that don't have that field or that value in the field. This brings us to the last option you see in the screenshot, to replace existing data with import data including blank fields. This option will override data in Acctivate to be blank when there's information listed and the field map in the import doesn't have a value in it. In the same example I just gave about alternate product IDs, so you've mapped alternate product ID to update your products, and you've left the field blank for one of your products in the spreadsheet. So with this option selected, when you run the import, if there was an alternate product ID specified for that product already in Acctivate, after the import it will be blanked out because the value in the field for that product didn't have anything in it. If you're solely wanting to create new records, you just change the option to keep existing data and discard import data. So that will block you from updating data. It'll only allow creating new records. There is another option for missing record handling. The default is to create new records from import data. If you're only wanting to update existing records, you would change the option to discard data if matching record is found in the database. This would be useful when running a customer update and not wanting to add new customers in case the customer ID doesn't match the Acctivate customer ID exactly. This also comes in handy, let's say, if you're wanting to update the, let's say, ship to locations. So if that specific ship to location ID doesn't exist, that row will fail. When importing inventory transactions such as receipts and balance adjustment, you'll also notice another option for posting the transaction. With this option set to no, Acctivate will create an inventory transaction session for the user to open and review after the import. If you set the option to yes, the receipt or balance adjustment will automatically be posted into inventory after the import has processed. In the next section, we have the data editor. You'll see the source spreadsheet information as well as the map that you're currently working with. There will be a section labeled data to import, which will typically only show invalid rows or rows that failed unless all the rows have passed. In this window, you can actually edit what's being imported when there are errors without having to back out and modify the spreadsheet. That being said, if you have 300 or 1,000 failed rows for different reasons or a myriad of reasons, it may be better to just edit the spreadsheet and try again. It really just depends on the types of errors you're receiving. You could also go back to the mapping section and maybe set up conversions for information that's failing on multiple rows. And if you wanted to, you can toggle between showing only invalid rows or showing all rows. The rows that pass will be checked and the rows that failed will not be checked as kind of complete or passed. At the bottom of the window, you'll see statistics on how many rows passed, failed, and total rows imported. And also the errors will be listed for each row that's highlighted. Once you highlight it, it'll show the specific error that failed to give you the information needed to correct the data for it to import into Acctivate. And this all happens during the validation of the import. So that way you're not just importing in a whole bunch of data that may be bad or mapped badly. When you're finally ready to import the data after it's been validated in the previous window, you'll reach the import confirmation screen. This will be the window where you see exactly how many fields are being updated or created based on the type of import you're running. For example, the product import will show product, price, and warehouse records being created or updated. You'll be prompted to run a backup prior to completing the import. It's highly recommended to do this step. If it's your first time importing, again, it would be wise to do this during downtime in case you need to restore from the backup you've created. I would also recommend specifying a backup description to kind of give you an idea if you do need to restore and you have multiple restore points to go back to, that you understand like what this point starts at. And I'll be doing an example of that during the demo. This definitely comes in handy when importing things like multiple ship-to locations or customer contacts when creating new Acctivate companies. It gives you a point to revert back to in case something was mapped incorrectly or not caught. If you had failed rows after the validation step, we give you the option to create an exception spreadsheet with the failed rows, as well as the reason for failure in that spreadsheet. So this makes it easier to resolve errors by giving you only the rows that failed rather than having to go through the original spreadsheet, find which rows failed, update, and re-import. So if you're importing in like 14,000 rows and 300 of them fail, it's definitely easier to work with just those 300 rather than the whole 14,000. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at Acctivate. I've got a couple of things to run through just to give you examples of how the different imports work, and then we'll go to the questions. Okay, so I've already created an Excel query. If we have time, I will show you how to quickly create one of those. But we do have an extensive webinar specifically on Excel queries and a couple of really good help articles on our help site. So I did a query on the product class as well as the general ledger accounts. And the reason I did the general ledger accounts is because I wanted to make sure that I'm only seeing cost of goods sold accounts to see if I have any other cost of goods sold account to create a new product class with. I just have one in my books. Just wanted to show you how easy it is to work with Excel on the database queries. So I'm going to go over to the product class and I'm going to add this raw materials product class to the list. And I'm just going to drag this value down and the cost of goods sold account ID down. We no longer use adjustment account ID, so that's not necessary. And I'm going to hit save. And you'll need to close the spreadsheet before you import. And to import, you go to File, Import Data. And these are the different imports that we have available that I was talking about earlier. Product class and product type are both new imports, so we're going to go ahead and create a new mapping for product classes to use that Excel query. So we'll do create mapping, edit and delete are grayed out because there's no other mappings available. We'll select the Excel query file. It automatically shows the worksheets in alphabetical order, so we're going to select product class. The first row contains field names. And you can see not only the column A, but the column header. So we'll give it a name. And we'll save the mapping. Go to the columns. Now this is where you actually map the columns in the spreadsheet to the Acctivate fields. So here's that key field that I was talking about earlier, the product class ID. So you can either select it or you can type the column letter or number depending on how your spreadsheet's set up. And then do the description, the cost of goods sold account, and the sales account. Now, if we wanted to, we could also set this to default. So let's find the sales account. And we'll set that as a default. So since it's set as a default, the sales account ID doesn't have an Acctivate field mapped to it because that's not necessary. We've got it set as a default. Okay, and then you can see product class, description. You can scroll over here and see the cost of goods sold account. You click begin import. I changed the mapping since I saved it the first time. Hit yes. Everything passed. This shows you everything that's mapped. It's not going to show the defaults. It's only going to show what's mapped. You can see all these are checked. That means everything passed. The file name that we're using, the mapping name of class import, and also the worksheet that we're using. Everything's good. We're going to hit next, and again this shows us the statistics. 10 rows passed, 0 failed, 10 rows total. And we'll hit finish. Here's the backup prompt. I'm going to run a backup and I'm going to give it a description. Start backup, yes. Okay. Import complete. And on this screen, you can see the statistics again. You can see what was created. 1 record was created, and then 9 were updated. The 9 were updated because they were all mapped on the import, so they were all updated. So we'll hit close. Go to Configuration Manager. and just verify that everything's set up correctly. Inventory, product class. Now we have this new raw materials product class. And the same thing goes for product type. The code or product type on the import is what's the key field, and then you'll have the description, and then if you wanted to do mark some as inactive, you could map the status if you wanted to update the existing types. Okay, so now let's edit an import. So we're going to go back to import data, and I've set up a customer ship to import, and that's going to be done in the customer imports. You can see I've got the ship to addresses, which is the name that I set up, and then the mapping description is updating and adding ship to locations. And we want to make sure to have this information because a lot of our customers will have multiple import templates because that gives you the ability to map different fields. So this information gives you what you need to select the correct mapping. Let's say if you need to switch out the spreadsheets or something like that. So I'm going to edit mapping and just show you how this one's set up. So I've got the customer ID, location ID, tax category because that's based on the ship to location, and default job number. I'll just show you a quick here. The customer ID is going to be mapped in the customer section, and the shipping information like the location ID is going to be mapped in the ship to address section. So we've got the default job number, location ID, which is the key field for ship to locations, and the tax category ID. So this is these are the advanced options I was talking about earlier. I'm going to keep it as the default options just to run through this so you can see if there's any errors or anything like this. So replace existing data with import data, ignoring blank fields. So you see that the job number for this Dallas ship to location on ABC is blank. If I ran this import and there's a job number already in Dallas, then it won't override that. And let's go ahead and open up ABC so we can check that out. Dallas doesn't have a job number. Let's go ahead and add one. Just random numbers. Save. Fort Worth doesn't have a job number, but it's got a tax category. Dallas does have a job number, but it does not have a tax category. So we've got ignoring blank fields, so it should just ignore any blanks unless that's a required field, and it should create new records from import data. Bubba Stores is not a customer that exists in the database. So we'll hit begin import. One row failed, and again, we've got this show only invalid rows checked, so we've only got Bubba Stores. Tax category ID is not a valid choice. So on this data editor, tax category ID, we can be like, oh, okay, well, it's set to Fort Worth. I thought I had a Fort Worth tax category ID. Well, this one is something that's in Configuration Manager, so it has a drop-down, and you can actually change the value here on the spreadsheet. And if we move out of that field, you can see that now this has passed. Well, let's say we're importing in a whole bunch of ship to locations, and that Fort Worth was spelled out for all those ship to locations. So we want to set up a conversion instead of having to manually select that on each row. So we'll go back. If you go back, you'll lose changes you've made in the data. Hit continue, or do you want to continue? I'm going to hit yes. What this is saying is this doesn't change your spreadsheet. It only changes it here for the import. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to columns. Tax category ID is in the shipping or the ship to address section. With that highlighted, you can see the show conversions. So in the from, I'm going to do Fort Worth, spelled out exactly like it is here. And then in the to field, we're going to do FW because that's the value that we want to convert it to. We'll click in the new field to save that. Begin import, or mapping was changed. Do you want to save? Go ahead and hit yes. So if you had that error on, 90 or 100 or who knows how many rows, now that you've got that conversion, any record that's set to Fort Worth for tax category ID will now be FW, and it should pass. Okay, so now we're going to go back and we're going to change the options. So we're going to change this missing record to discard data if missing record isn't found in the database. We'll hit begin import. Now we're getting this failed row because you can't insert the record. The mapping does not allow records to be inserted. Bubba Stores is not a customer in Acctivate, so it won't allow you to create this record. Now let's say if you had ABC and you had a new ship to location ID, then that would also fail because you can't create a new ship to location with that option selected. So we'll go back and we'll change this back to create new record, and we'll do keep existing data and discard import data. Now this one isn't going to allow records to be updated. So ABC, since it's got the, this is an existing customer and existing ship to locations, it's only going to allow us to create new records. Go back. Change this to replace existing data with import data, ignoring blank fields. So let's take a look at what we have here on the import and compare it to the ship to locations on the customer record. So we've got ABC, job number is this 987, and the tax category is blank. Tax category on the import is Dallas, and the job number is blank. And again, Fort Worth, we've got no job number, and we've got a tax category of Fort Worth. So now let's begin the import. We'll hit save, and we're going to actually run the import this time. And again, all rows passed because we've got that tax category conversion set. This is just an import confirmation. We'll hit finish, run the backup. Start backup, hit yes, okay. Import complete, all rows passed, 2 records created, and then we've got 4 updated because it counts each record as being an update. So now if we refresh this, the tax category stayed as Fort Worth because we ignored blank fields, but we added the job number because that had a value in the import. And Dallas now has a tax category, and the job number stayed as it was before we imported. So let's go back and change those options again to include blank fields. So now we would expect the job number to be removed for the Dallas ship to location and the tax category ID to be removed for the Fort Worth location. Begin import. Go ahead and save mapping. Everything passed, so everything shows up. We didn't create any new records, but we did update ship to locations. So now if we refresh this, the job number is removed because that had a blank value in the spreadsheet. And if we go back to Fort Worth, the job number stayed and the tax category was removed. So those are how the different options change the way that the import works. So let's take a look at a transactional import. Import data, receipts. We've got an import already set up for receipts from vendors. This is a spreadsheet sent by our vendor to import received quantities. So I'm going to edit the mapping. And you can see what's already mapped here as well as the mapping details. If we go to the columns, now the transactional imports have different sections. So you've got the detail section, which is going to be the specific products and all the detail that you see on the inventory receipts window. So the product ID, vendor, product, location, all this detail. Then we have the session section, which is going to be the session date or session ID. And then we have the transaction, which is going to be the fields that you see up here. Transaction 1, purchase order, vendor, description, reference, receiving document, warehouse, document date, and exchange rate as well if you have multi-currency. So as you can see here, we've got product ID, purchase order number, because this is related to a specific purchase order, quantity that you're importing. I didn't map the unit or unit cost. I'm going to let that default from the purchase order. And then we also have a couple of products that were lot controlled for these two purchase orders, so I added the lot numbers here. And on the options, we've got this post transactions set to no. So what that means is after I run this import, we're going to have a new inventory receipt session to view. And since we've got multiple purchase order numbers listed, that receipt session is going to have multiple transactions because you'll have one transaction for each purchase order. Begin import. Everything passed. Good to go. Next. Finish. Start backup. Okay, 6 rows passed out of 6 rows total. We created one session with 2 transaction and 6 detail lines. Here, I'll just reopen it. Now we have session 55. And you can see transaction 1 is for PO 1259. It's got the products I listed as well as the quantities. Now, if I open purchase order 1259, you'll see that this is a partial receipt. Cal 10 had ordered 200, but this import was for 100. If I go to transaction 2, you see all the details that I mapped for 1260. If we open 1260, we see that there were only 2 products listed, but TP201 is a lot controlled item, and our vendor gave us multiple lots. So we have 2 lines or 2 rows for TP201, each with different lot numbers and different quantities. Our ordered quantity was 10. They broke it out in 5 packs, let's say, and each of those packs has its own lot number. I'm not going to post this, but let's say this is good to go. You verified it. Both transactions are correct. When you're ready, you hit post. That will post it into inventory. I'm going to keep the receipt session open, but I'm going to close the purchase order. So now we're going to close this, and we're going to edit that receipt import, and we're going to change the option to post it. So we change the post transaction to yes. We'll save the mapping. Begin import. Again, everything passed. I apparently put caps lock on. Okay. Okay. Now, if we go to product TP201 and we go to transactions for the D warehouse, the F warehouse, excuse me. Now we'll see receipt session 56, which isn't in here, and I'll go ahead and close this out just to verify that, it's not there. It won't be because it was posted. We only have 55, which was the one that was set to no. And on the transactions tab, we now have these 2 new lot numbers because we had that set to yes. But as you can see, the import data utility, it really works the same for most of the imports. It's all going to be the same basic principle. You'll have the source sheet, the source spreadsheet, the worksheet that you're using, the summary, columns, and options. The column information does change based on the type of import you're running. So if we go to products, you'll see that we have, alternate unit, initial balance, product, product price, product supplier, product warehouse. Let's take a look at the questions. Okay, is there the ability to import items into a purchase order? This list right here is the only imports, at least other than the sales order import, which is a different utility that we have available to import information into Acctivate, other than obviously like EDI or web store. So we don't have the ability to import purchase orders themselves into Acctivate. It's definitely something we're aware of that customers want, so it may be available in future updates, but currently for purchase orders specifically, all we have is the ability to import in receipts related to that purchase order. We've got another really good question. I usually try to do imports in our practice or model company. Is there any downside to that rather than backing up and doing it in production to start with and backing up? It's actually recommended, but we do have some customers that have elected to remove their practice or model company, so they just don't have that option for some reason. But if you do still have your practice or model companies available, that's definitely a really good idea, because the data is going to be at least mostly the same from what your live data is if you're doing, products or customer imports. So that would give you a good way to do that. The only, I would say, downside to doing that is that you're going to have to set up the template in both the practice and the live company. Unless you're editing existing templates, if you're creating new ones, again, you're going to have to do it in both companies. The import data utility is definitely available to all users. There's no need to purchase an add-on module to have that available to your company. Okay, so we've got another great question here. Can we import product data that we need in Acctivate, but there's no current field that exists for this information to go into? For this to occur, first you'll have to set up a custom field in Acctivate. And once that custom field is set up in Acctivate, then you can map that custom field on your import. I don't know if I have any custom fields in this database. So let's go ahead. I'll just go ahead and quickly check customer 2. No. So we're going to close this and go into configuration management, and we'll create a custom field real quick. We'll do it for products. And we'll do a generic text field. Of course, this can be whatever you need it to be named. And we'll set it to 50 characters. Save. Okay. That just tells you that everybody needs to be logged out for that to show up. Now if we go to import data and products, when we create the mapping in the product field, you'll now see your custom field. So this way you can have that custom data in your spreadsheet. Once that custom field is created, if it's not already created in your database, you can map that field on your import. But we definitely allow thousands of rows to be imported without issues. I've personally worked with customers that have over 10,000 rows that they're importing, whether that be creating new products or updating products or customers, or definitely ship to locations, especially for our EDI customers that have multiple trading partners, and those trading partners have, tens if not hundreds of ship to locations. We definitely support importing in tens of thousands of rows. Now, if you're getting into even your Excel limits, which I'm not sure what the Excel limit is, but I know years ago I worked with a customer that had 1 million products, which is just a lot of products to handle in an import. We had to break that up a little bit just because it had to load all those rows, and that did slow it down a little bit, but that was, definitely an off case for importing data. As always, you can check our help site at help.acctivate.com for any questions you may have. Under the Learn Acctivate section, we have a webinars link, and that will give you a list of all of our recorded webinars. We have definitely been diligently working on building the content in order to give our customers the ability to research aspects of Acctivate easily and on the go. If you're not seeing something on the help site that you think would be a good article, just let us know and we'll get that up there for you. Thank you for joining us for our Importing Data webinar. We hope you got a lot out of this, and have a great day.